What's up, everybody? Welcome back. We're here with a special edition with some more NFL DFS picks and lineup advice for DraftKings and FanDuel. This time for the Christmas two-gamer. That's right. Wednesday, we have two NFL games. We're here to break it down for you. Welcome. I am Brian Jester, co-founder here at Occupy Fantasy, joined by Jack, architect of the lineup builder at Occupy Fantasy. Jack, what's up, man? Merry Christmas Eve. How are you? How's it going? Excited for the slate?
Merry Christmas Eve to you too. Yeah, no, it's exciting. I have to apologize for not being in a fun location here. If we recorded tonight, maybe I would, but other than that, I'm excited. I think it's an interesting video because we pretty much already talked about these teams.
Which is crazy because one, we don't have Wednesday games very often. In fact, the last one we did was Baltimore and Pittsburgh during the COVID year. But we had these exact four teams playing just 4 days ago on Saturday, and we talked about them in a video. Now the matchups have just changed. Really crazy scheduling by the NFL. So we have a good idea of how these teams operate. Obviously, it's been 16 weeks as well. But we know how to approach two gamers. We know how these teams operate. The one thing is, we're recording this Christmas Eve morning, like 10:30 a.m. Eastern. We don't have any projections yet. We don't have ownership projections. We do have salaries, but basically we're flying a little blind this early, and I feel like a lot of the industry is going to be catching up as well as content is being produced on such a short week. I mean, Jack, just from, if we're getting really technical here for the people who want to look behind the scenes, we're reliant on a lot of our data feeds, and they're not even ready just yet on Tuesday morning. So it's tough for everyone out there putting content together, which makes it tough for us to give you really actionable advice like we normally do a few hours before slate starts.
That's true. Fortunately, I think we can focus in on the good things, which are the pertinent things, which are going to be the injuries. Right there are quite a few updates there. Any pricing differences, and we can just like you said, look at what these teams did a week ago with the holidays and stuff. It seems unlikely they're going to change it up a lot, right? So, yeah, I still think we can find some stuff, but we'll get into it.
Let's do that. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to talk about the injuries that we have so far. No final injury reports yet for these four teams, but we have a pretty good idea of who's going to be available and who won't be. We'll talk about some interesting usage notes from their games on Saturday and how we can apply it to this slate on Wednesday. We'll give, obviously, we have our 4 high level short slate strategies that we always talk about. We'll see how they apply to this slate from an early perspective. And then Showdown, we always have a good idea about Showdown and how players are going to be priced and how their ownership is going to shake out. And we have some really interesting Showdown notes as well, and some actually decent prize pools on both sites for the Showdown slates. So stick around for that until the very end. Just some programming notes. The daily plug will be out on the site probably later tonight, Christmas Eve. So make sure you take a look out for that. And ownership and the model will be up probably late tonight, but it could be possible based on our data feeds Wednesday morning, Christmas morning. So just be patient with us. And as soon as we have an idea of when those will be up, we'll let you know in our Discord server. So, Jack, let's start with the injuries. We have a game at 1 p.m. with Kansas City and Pittsburgh, game at 4:30 with Baltimore and Houston. And let's combine injuries and usage into one segment here. So we look at KC, two big defensive injuries to monitor. There are slot corner Shamari Connor, who missed Saturday's game. We talked about that on Saturday's video. And then Chris Jones, one of the most impactful defensive players. He is questionable as well. And Jack, this is kind of a situation where we don't really know if it's veteran rest on a really weird short week or if he's truly out. But that would make this game a little more enticing if one or both these guys are missing from Kansas City's defense.
Yeah, I wish I had an easy way to do this, but I think just from reading, like the splits on Kansas City's defense with and without Chris Jones are like night and day.
Yeah.
Like he's the guy. So I think Pickens coming back plus if Chris Jones is out, I think we'll get into it. We talk about the other game. This is the game that kind of looks grosser to people. But those two injury swaps are night and day from last week, right?
Yeah, because obviously Chris Jones was playing for Kansas City. George Pickens was not on the field for Pittsburgh, and they were throwing to guys like Scotty Miller and Ben Skoranek. That probably will not be the case this week, as George Pickens is slated to return full practice on Monday. He's missed the last couple of games with the hamstring, and generally we've been doing this for so long. We look for when a guy has a hamstring injury, when they get in that full practice. Generally, that's the indication that they are close to returning or likely to return. That seems to be the case for George Pickens. So let's monitor the final report today. We might not know until tomorrow, but right now we're slotting George Pickens into the lineup for Pittsburgh. And then, Jack, speaking of defensive injuries, they're probably without their best corner in Joey Porter, who got hurt on Saturday's game, knee injury. They're not expecting him to play. So if we're looking for defensive injuries to guide us towards this game, we got at least one, but possibly three that do that.
Yeah, and although it wasn't a player that missed and is now playing, just seeing Hollywood Brown get out there, run routes, catch passes, look healthy, explosive. I think again, you're getting a better pass catcher from Mahomes, and you're getting a significant defensive injury. So, do you think that Vegas is maybe not? Do you think the Vegas and the projection systems are probably not going to pick up on these adjustments quite as much as they should?
It doesn't seem like it because right now this game has a 4 point lower total than the other game on the board. Is that right?
43. Yeah, that one's a 46 and a half. So yeah, four points. Yep. 3
Yeah.
4.
So I mean, it's defensive injuries are always underestimated, not necessarily by the betting markets, but certainly by fantasy points projections across the industry. So I think that will be the case. Now, speaking of these two teams, let's look at what they did on Saturday. Some interesting usage notes. We'll start with Kansas City. And Jack, I'll flip it to you first on the running back side, where Kareem Hunt outsnapped Isaiah Pacheco 32-26, nearly equal routes and carries. Hunt scored the touchdown. And if we look at DraftKings pricing, we see that let's see. Hunt is 5,200. Pacheco still has the pricing edge on DraftKings. He's 5,700. Over on FanDuel, we see the pricing is Hunt has the edge there, 6,200 versus Pacheco, 5,900. Now, do you think they're going to continue to split? Do you think that there's a chance because there was a short week, maybe Pacheco gets more work this time around? How do you see the field playing it?
Yeah, I think we don't know, but I think we'll see the field do what they always do, which is I think last week I think Pacheco's projection edge on a lot of sites was very small, like a couple points, but Pacheco was like 60% owned and Hunt was like 10% owned. Based on the game log, I bet it's going to be flipped, and it's going to flip, right? Kareem Hunt will be 60% owned, and Pacheco will be 10% owned. So we know what to do with that, right? In a small field contest, you probably just play the higher owned guy, and in large field, it opens up opportunities. Or maybe if you're looking for your one pivot in a small field lineup, that could be it. So I think, Brian, I don't know if you disagree. I think we don't know. Snaps and the carries look about the same. So if Pacheco's the one that breaks off the long run or the touchdown, then he could easily outscore Hunt. That's my 2 cents.
Yeah, I agree. And again, we're not going to know for sure until we get projected ownership in, and maybe we're incorrectly projecting this early on how the ownership will shake out. So our advice to you is here, and a lot of our advice in this video is going to be: here's what we think, here's what is possible, and then once the projections come in and ownership comes in, you'll know what to do with it based on what we've told you in this video. So I definitely agree with you there. At receiver, you mentioned that Hollywood Brown did return. Now, this was his first game of 2024. Got injured in the first preseason game. He ran 16 of the 50 routes for the Chiefs, which was actually six. It was behind Worthy, Kelsey, DeAndre Hopkins, Justin Watson, and Noah Gray. I imagine that only continues to rise, as he did look good, by the way. But he did see 8 targets on those 16 routes, which is an insane target per route rate. So we have to like him as an option, either in the stack or without the stack, especially at his cheap price tag.
Yeah, and especially with Porter out, I mean, it was good to see just like a speedy receiver out there for Kansas City.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe that's why they were getting him the ball a lot because they were like, it's about time. So, I think maybe now that we covered the injuries in this game, let's talk a little bit about playing this game. Um, Thoughts on super stacking, trash plays. I mean, I think super stacking this game is probably unique already, and you don't necessarily have to dive to like 5% backup tight ends. And what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I think just from what we are looking at early, it looks like the other game is by far going to be the more popular stacking option. It looks like the other game, Lamar Jackson and CJ Stroud, will have most of the ownership compared to Patrick Mahomes and Russell Wilson. But with the defensive injuries, with all the guys on Kansas City, with the Pittsburgh running backs, there are a lot of ways to stack this game. And we have guys on Baltimore and Houston. As we said in Saturday's video, when we're looking to game stack, we either want one game to completely outscore the other or the second game to have concentrated scoring. And Jack, perfectly opportune guys to capture all the scoring for Baltimore and Houston in whether it's Nico Collins or Joe Mixon for Houston. but obviously Derrick Henry from Baltimore as well. So I see there are a lot of paths for Kansas City and Pittsburgh to be an optimal game stack, despite it being the lower owned of the two.
Yeah, and I think I mean, like we said, we haven't really built lineups yet. We have no projections, but just clicking through the salaries, the Pittsburgh Kansas City game is pretty cheap.
Hmm.
You can probably fit two of the three guys that you just mentioned, Collins, Henry, Mixon. So I think, not that we give out lineups, but like if you want to play the early game, I think that's kind of your goal, right? Try to find a super stack with Mahomes or Russell Wilson. Try to find at least one, maybe two of Henry, Mixon,
Yep.
Collins, and then if the game script goes in that game where one of those guys scores two touchdowns, then you have a really good shot.
And that seems like a really good small field build as well, right? Like you get the guys that you like from Kansas City and Pittsburgh, and you fit two of the three studs in the second game. That's a really balanced approach. I like that a lot for small field. Obviously, we're going to build that way in large field too, but it does feel like a really high floor approach for small field contests as well. And some slates, even on Saturday slate, we said you could leave a lot of salary. Pricing wasn't that tight. Pricing seems a lot tighter on this slate, Jack, for both sides, FanDuel and DraftKings. So it's not where you can just say, oh, here are the four studs. Let's just play them all and try to figure out the other four guys in our lineup. We can't play all the studs, which I think makes it a more interesting slate as a result.
Yep. And Pickens is a big change there, right?
Yes.
I don't know what is he? So he's the second most expensive receiver on FanDuel. What is he at DraftKings?
Same. So Nico's 8,300, and then Pickens is 6,600, and then Flowers is 64. If you remember back to Saturday slate, Collins was at, I think, either the same price or about the same price, and then the next most expensive player was Zay Flowers at 59. So now we get that $6,600 player in there, and Flowers is up to 64. So that's part of the big reason why the pricing is tighter on this slate.
Yep. And I mean, people are going to play Flowers. I mean, Pickens for sure gets squeezed here. I would think there's just not enough room, like you said, to click in all these guys. So like if there's those guys are the same price and people are playing Lamar Jackson, like they're going to click in Zay Flowers, or even if they're playing the Houston quarterback.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Any trash plays of interest on the early game, or are we more just going, the four-man stacking bringbacks is kind of the preferred route there?
Yeah, I think just the traditional way here, because the ones we would consider now that George Pickens is back, Calvin Austin is relegated to his wide receiver two, wide receiver three role. So he should get lower ownership, but we still know he's electric and he can catch a deep ball. So Calvin Austin at 4,200, I think is interesting. Noah Gray at 3,300 on a slate where pricing is tight. I think we'll see a lot of two tight end lineups, and Gray's been running a ton of routes. So I think Noah Gray might even be popular, but he's a guy that could help you fit in another stud if you decide to go two tight ends or game stacking from this game. I think he'd be the most playable, quote unquote, trash play because he's technically a backup. But other than that, I really don't think so. The most interesting positional room in this game is the Pittsburgh running back room for me because last week we saw Jalen Warren. Shout out Jalen Warren, helped me win on that showdown slate pretty big. He outsnapped Harris 40-17 in that game where they were trailing for most of the game. 26 routes to Najee's 8. I'm wondering if we see that flip or if it's another game script where they're trailing that Warren completely outsnaps him again. But that has a big impact on this slate.
Yeah, I think the ownership was pretty close, right, on
Yeah.
those two. And again, game log chasing. We'll see how much the projections update, but I would guess Warren is higher owned. Yeah, so I think it's same idea with the Kansas City Royals. You just got to be aware of the ownership and make your decisions based on what contest you're playing and if you need a lone player or not. Um, One we did not mention. Well, by the way, shout out to you mentioning the slot. Was it whose slot corner was out? You said.
Kansas City's.
Yep. So Austin is the slot guy. And like you said, lower ownership exposed player, so there's an opportunity. We have not talked about let's see, tight end. No, I think we're good. Yeah, I think that's about it, right?
Yeah, I think so. Just really quickly, we don't have, again, because we have no data just yet, no underperforming wide receivers just yet. But as we talked about on Saturday, DeAndre Hopkins and Travis Kelsey were on the list. They didn't do anything to get off the list. I have a feeling that when we pull the numbers again tonight or tomorrow morning, that they will remain on the list. So there's a good chance that DeAndre Hopkins, Travis Kelsey, underperformers in this game stack that we're targeting as well, Jack.
Yeah, one note too. I remember talking to you about this, and we were kind of complaining about it. That Tank Dell, and we hope he recovers, swiftly from that horrible injury. had a monster game after kind of doing nothing. And I've read a lot. I don't know if you've seen this too. Kansas City really prioritizes like taking away the number one target,
Mm,
and a lot of times like wide receiver twos do well against them. Um, so that could have been a reason for that. And here you're going to get Austin and like Van Jefferson's probably going to be like 5% owned or something. So
true.
again, more potential opportunities for this game to have a winner, and or even just guys as a low end one off if you want them.
Like that too. All right, let's move on to the second game, Baltimore and Houston. If we look at the injuries to start, Zay Flowers is technically questionable. Didn't practice Sunday or Monday, but John Harbaugh says he expects him to be out there. Let's make sure that that is the case. We, as of right now, for the purposes of this video, we're expecting Zay Flowers to play. Unfortunately, Nelson Aguilar still dealing with the concussion on a short week, a second short week. It's really hard to get through the protocol. He did not practice Monday, so we cannot see him playing. If we look at what happened last week when he played, it was Jack, shout out to us. We called it more two tight end sets. Likely was optimal in the Showdown slate. Love that. Andrews was optimal on the Classic slate. And those guys ran 16 and 17 routes respectively, whereas the number 3 and number 4 wide receivers, Tylan Wallace only ran 6 routes. Devontae Walker only ran 4 routes. It sounds like we could see a similar setup here again without Nelson Aguilar.
Yes, I was waiting for this game to congratulate you on your big win. But I love to see that it was likely who we talked about. And yeah, I mean, we literally called it. We said double Baltimore tight end, and they both scored. They both got the routes, like you just said. Like you said, with Aguilar out, we have no reason to believe they would change that up, right? So to me, like again, we don't give out lineups, but if you want to play Lamar Jackson, small field, large field, whatever, like the, I would probably start by heavily considering the double tight end build, just because it's going to be so unique.
Yep. And it would have gotten there last week. Dalton Schultz caught the touchdown in the early game, but both these guys did enough, and especially in small field where you don't have to be perfect, they definitely did enough where if you played it, you could have profited or even won your contest depending on the rest of your lineup. So I think we go right back to it again this week. The big injury here for usage is on the running back side for Baltimore. Justice Hill had that nasty concussion. Can't imagine he plays. And in fact, I would just go out and say he will not play because he was ruled out with a concussion. He physically cannot be ready through the protocol this early. So he'll be out. It's Rasheen Ali, who is their rookie running back. He was active last week, got some touches. But I think, Jack, I didn't put this in the notes for you, but Keaton Mitchell, who was so explosive last year, it sounds like he's going to play this week. John Harbaugh said he'll be ready to play, and he was absolutely electric in 2024 as a rookie. He had a nasty knee injury at the end, but he's finally back. I could see Mitchell leapfrogging Ali here. Let's see if the beats have any insight information here. But this is a situation to monitor because we know Henry's not going to get 100% of the touches.
Yeah, and this is the kind of slate, where we see backup running backs win on two gamers when you have a handful of really expensive studs that can all score a bunch of points, and you can see lineups where like a minimum priced backup running back scores 4 points, and that's optimal because it lets you jam in the other studs. So I'm just looking. I bet you he's got to be almost a stone minimum here. Let's see. Try Keaton Mitchell on FanDuel 4,400. Yeah. So just looking at the other kind of bad second tier running backs, Jalen, Checo, Warren, everyone's kind of 6K. So that's an extra 1,500. That lets you upgrade like a secondary receiver to, Pickens, Flowers, or go from one of those running backs I just mentioned up to Derrick Henry, Joe Mixon. So yeah, I think that's a great play. Would you consider those guys small field, or is that kind of a large field dart thrower?
It's probably more large field, I would say, unless we get some sort of note from. And Baltimore has really good beat reporters. Some teams we'd have no idea. We'd just be going blind. But there are some teams that have good reporters like Baltimore who could let us know that, oh, Mitchell's going to be the guy, he'll see some work, or Ali's going to be the guy, he'll see some work. Again, it could be either one of those guys. I don't know if I'd play them in small field unless we get a very concrete report that they're going to split touches and get Justice Hill's role, which I don't think will be the case. Probably just large field only for me, I would think.
Yep, that makes sense.
Okay. Houston side. So you mentioned Tank Dell. Unfortunately, he's lost for the season with his injury. And as a result, we will see, and we kind of saw it last week, was Robert Woods and Xavier Hutchins splitting work. But that was without John Mechie. And Jack, I think John Mechie is going to go overlooked by the field here because they're not going to realize that he is back. Doesn't have. I looked at one early projection system. And he's only projected for a couple of points, but John Mechie could be the number two receiver here with Tank Dell out, and he's super cheap on both sides as well.
Yep, and I think this is a good one to glance at the slot outside utilization. So Mechie is a slot guy. Robert Woods is a slot guy. I would not be surprised if projection sites just put Woods as like the wide receiver two, and he gets like 30% ownership. I mean, did you see that in what you looked at?
Yeah, I think because when we were looking last week to replace Mechie, we thought that Woods would be the guy. They actually split work more than we expected with Xavier Hutchinson, but Hutchinson was Collins' outside replacement when Collins was hurt earlier in the year. I would not be shocked if it's Nico, Hutchinson, and Mechie, and Woods is the rotational guy. If that's the case, we would have a big ownership edge and projection edge in terms of John Mechie and even Xavier Hutchinson.
Yeah, if Woods is like, and we can probably post this once we look at the other sites, and you'll see in the ownership. If Woods is like the quote unquote wide receiver two by the industry, this is a huge opportunity and a great way to play this game because people playing Lamar Jackson are going to look for a cheap punt receiver, and they're going to go, oh, Robert Woods, like I know who that is. He's
Yep.
projected for 7 points. So love that take. Yeah, okay.
Let me see here. Cade Stover, and this is more of a probably more of a showdown take than anything, but he does run some routes. Cade Stover, they're tight end too. He had an appendectomy. He was out for a couple of games. He's actually returning. He's min price on the classic slate, also super cheap on Showdown, so he could be in play as well. Let's see here. I think that's all the notes I have for this game. Do you have any other takes on this game specifically?
No, I think this is going to be the chalky game, right? So small field, like this makes a lot of sense to just start with this game. We've given you a couple ways to play it. The double tight end or the secondary pass catcher pivot for Houston. Those are two good ways to do it. And then if you want to play the other game, you've got these stud guys in here. Do you think the field's going to do a lot of like overstacking of this game, or is the pricing just so expensive here that they just can't? Could that be an edge if you just like jam in all the studs from this game and hope it goes like 38-31, and the other game is like 13-10?
I think it's possible. Yeah, we know for a fact the field won't like 4-2 stack this or 4-3 or 5-2 or whatever on DraftKings. So I think that is an edge, right? It's going to be the more popular game, but that doesn't mean, Jack, in one of our best strategies for short slates, mega stacking, playing multiple guys from one side, playing multiple guys from the opposing side in the same game, that doesn't mean the field is necessarily going to do that as much as they should.
Yeah, and I think especially with this pricing, there's an opportunity there. Any thoughts on like, I think generally we say two gamers, you just kind of let it do whatever. But Mixon and Henry in the same lineup, Lamar, Mixon, Henry, same. Like, do you think you just kind of let it do whatever with these kind of things, or do you have any stuff you would say, definitely don't construct it like this. That's just too much.
I think initially it feels too much to do Lamar, Henry, Mixon, but we've seen so many games this year where both Lamar and Henry have gotten there, and Mixon has dominated opportunities for Houston's backfield. I think I would just let it run, unless like all of your lineups came back that way, which it won't. I think I would just let it run. I can't think of any rules off the top of my head that I would implement now on limiting which guys would pair with each other from this game.
Yeah, I think one angle you could take in even like a small field build with this one is to the point of overstacking this game. Mixon and Collins in the same lineup, I would bet is pretty unique just because they're so expensive. Like if you played Lamar and ran back both of them,
Mhm.
you're gonna have to punt hard in the other game. But that could be another way you're playing. I think we talked about this. You can play high owned guys, but still have a unique lineup just from the construction.
I'm just playing with it now, right? If you played Lamar, Mixon, Collins, Andrews, likely double tight end, that's a 3-2 stat. You can add one more Ravens player, whether it's one of the cheaper receivers like Bateman or even further down Tylan Wallace, who I do like as a stacking partner in this game. That leaves you 4,500 left per player. I think you can still make that work because you can play Warren or Harris. You can play Hunt or Pacheco. They're both relatively cheap. You can play a defense from that game. That's a really good idea. I do like that, Jack.
Awesome. Okay.
All right.
Any
Just
other notes from this game?
I
Go
don't
ahead.
think.
Sorry.
No, 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 no. You're good. You're good. I think if we talk about trash plays, we mentioned Wallace and Walker is the number three and number four for Baltimore. We already talked about Houston receivers. We talked about the Baltimore secondary running backs. I think we're pretty good as far as usage goes for this game and tips for this game. Let's just go over really quickly for those who are interested in the short slate strategies that we go in depth on in every video. We'll just kind of touch on it really quickly for this video. It's a leaving salary on the table. It's playing low owned plays. It's mega stacking, which we've kind of already talked about, Jack, all of these things. You have any other insight into leaving salary, low owned plays? We don't know who they're going to be exactly just yet, but we know that there will be some available. We talked about mega stacking. I think it seems pretty clear that low owned plays and mega stacking is more in play on this slate than leaving salary on the table. But any additional insight there?
Nope, I think you hit it. I think just we have the stud players here, and then Pickens coming back. There's just yeah, it doesn't seem like you're going to get a slate where you've got some capable offenses. Like it doesn't seem like we're going to get a chaos slate where like a 5-point backup running back outscores multiple 8K players. So I think just yeah, overstacking honestly seems like the biggest edge that we kept coming back to here. And then we did talk about some low end pivots as well.
Okay, so let me ask you this. The other strategy that we really haven't touched on that much this year is late swapping. We'll probably have about a 30-minute window here, which may be right in the heart of prime time of Christmas activities at 4 o'clock in the afternoon on the East Coast. But if you're playing these contests, you have to at least make a trip to the bathroom or go out or run to the store or something to make some swaps, or just flat out tell people I got to go to the computer and make some swaps. But you and I talked a little bit. You made some swaps on Saturday's slate. It didn't pan out, but I think you and I were both happy with the decision you made in terms of getting a unique lineup, having a differentiated lineup with other people that you were tied with, still having a path to the top. I don't know if you want to touch on that specifically or just some general thoughts that people should be looking out for when they only have a limited time window to digest what happened in the first game, look at their contest, and then make swaps for the second game.
Yeah, I mean, real quick, I mean, I had a pretty good lineup with 3 players left, and but I could see this was a big FanDuel, and there was I think there was like 2 or 3 people ahead of me that had could have had the same players as me. So I was like, okay, I can't play the optimal lineup here,
Really
and
quickly,
the optimal,
how high were you
yeah.
in that contest, by the way, just so people know like
Um,
how far ahead you could
Probably
have looked?
like I was probably like top. I was like 300 or 400
Mhm.
away. But what I was looking for is how many people ahead of me had the same PMR. So I was like the third highest lineup with the 3-player PMR, where it
Gotcha.
was 2 players and a defense. So I swapped. I could have played Henry, Flowers, Ravens. Like that would have been like sort of the optimal. But I played Henry, likely Ravens.
Hmm.
And for a while, I was like top 2, top 3. Now it didn't pan out like you said, but likely outscoring Flowers is unlikely. But if I didn't make that, no pun intended, but I was literally dead if I didn't make a swap like
Right.
that. And I had a couple other like that, and I played like Pittsburgh guys. So I think just looking at your top handful of lineups that have PMR, I don't know if there's a good rule of thumb, but you can just kind of
Yeah.
like if you look above that lineup and people have a higher score in the same PMR a lot, you just can say, all right, this one's dead. Don't worry about it. But that's kind of how I do it, and it's actually pretty easy to just do it on your phone. So you're at Christmas dinner, you're just kind of like scrolling through.
It's surprisingly
Um,
much easier on the phone than desktop.
yeah, and people don't do it. People do not do it. They will just let their lineup sit there and draw dead. So
You, I
I mean,
mean, you mentioned last night in NHL. I'm not gonna name names or contests, but you said last night in a high dollar contest, people were very obviously blocked from first place in a winner take all, and they were not swapping. And this is massive entry fees. Not even talking about for the vast majority of you out there who are playing $1, $3, $5, $20 contests.
yeah, and again, I won a 2-gamer on a late swap like this. So and I know you've had some big ones with those too. So yeah, people don't do it. Just take 10 minutes, scan through it. It's worth it, literally.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Jack, let's finish off with some showdown specific thoughts and then we will get out of here. I know you got a flight to catch. So let's talk about this first game, Kansas City and Houston. And I will start on FanDuel and I'll toss it over to you here. But this is the first game, maybe all season, or at least in the last month or two, that the quarterbacks have been the most expensive players on the slate, which shouldn't be shocking, but it is shocking in 2024.
Yeah, we've had many complaints about this offline, but yeah, for once we get the quarterbacks as the most expensive. This is like it used to be. I mean, right off the bat, just Pickens is sitting there with the Q tag. I mean, people aren't going to do that, so I would look at that. You could go back. I mean, yes, we had Kelsey and Hopkins labeled underperforming. I don't know if they'll show up that way this week. They didn't have crazy games, but certainly probably nothing significant has changed about their roles. Maybe a little bit less with with Hollywood coming back, but I think maybe lower scoring game, right? You could look to the non-quarterbacks for MVP, and maybe we'll see a one quarterback lineup win for once, not two.
Dude, it's
But that's
possible.
kind of my lean on this game. What are you seeing on DraftKings here?
Let me see. Just really quick, I did want to point out Jalen Warren is only 8K on FanDuel compared to Najee Harris's 11.5. So that is your big salary difference. And we'll see heavy ownership on
Oh yeah.
Warren, right?
Yep, good one. Yeah.
Okay. So for DraftKings, I'm looking here. The first couple things I'd noticed on this showdown slate, and again, we'll have in depth thoughts in our daily plug later this evening. The first thing I noticed, Jack, was Steelers, Chiefs, Bucker, Boswell are all 4,800 or higher. I don't know if we've ever had a slate where we've had all four kickers and defenses 4,800 or higher. I can't recall a slate, and that makes this slate really interesting because we have that combined with all these overpriced guys, 6K to 8K. Calvin Austin's role is reduced. I guess they planned for Pickens maybe not to play. Hollywood, part-time player. Hopkins, underperforming. Kareem Hunt and Isaiah Pacheco splitting. Jalen Warren and Najee Harris splitting. Basically, every player is overpriced from 6K to 8K, and we have the expensive kickers and defenses. It's going to make builds really interesting for this DraftKings slate.
Yeah, what do you think people do there? Are they just gonna cheat captain, like really spread out, or are they gonna some $200 player is gonna go 15%, or
That's what I'm trying to figure out. I think Watson could end up popular, but really, it's Noah Gray is 3K. Fryermuth is only 4,400. I think those guys just get absolutely jammed, and what we end up seeing is probably two to three studs, one of the kickers or defenses, and then one maybe two of Fryermuth and Gray. So we end up with a more, I wouldn't say stars and scrubs, but like a three higher price, three middle price lineup, and I think that's what most of the field is going to do. So anything beyond that is going to be different on this slate.
do you think we get a rare game on both sides then, where the two quarterbacks is just not as? Because I would imagine maybe one of the two quarterbacks or get lower owned on DraftKings if you can't just jam both of them in every time.
I would think. I mean, Russ is 9,400. I can't imagine many people are playing Russ Wilson at 9,400 in this game, especially with this pricing.
Yeah, so we'll see a return to the old days where I don't know if folks remember this, but we had this rule of thumb. It was like the golden rule: underdog quarterback on Showdown, 6% captain, 33% flex, and
Yep.
then of course now with the new pricing, they're like 65% owned on every slate. But maybe we'll get a return to that.
I think we possibly could. We possibly could here with Russ Wilson and George Pickens here. So, but yeah, Pickens $9,600 questionable tag. Mahomes highest price guy 10-4. Just a really weird game compared to recent showdown slates. So I think Jack, just for people who try to like extrapolate what they've been doing in recent weeks, this game necessarily on both sides is not something where you can plug and play a template from how you've been playing to what's going to happen in this game, just based on the players and the pricing. It's really weird.
Yeah.
So, all right, moving on to Baltimore and Houston, I'll toss it back to you on FanDuel, where now we're getting the the pricing we're used to, where Lamar is only 15K, CJ Stroud only 12,500 here on FanDuel.
It just I throw up my hands, man. I mean, the field is just gonna click the quarterbacks in. Let's see. I mean, Andrews 10-5, likely 95. Kickers are 9. Yeah, Woods is 8K. So I think the Houston receiver pivot we discussed in the two game section would be one of the first places I'd look here. Probably the double tight end build is still quite unique. I would think, especially in small field, especially for FanDuel, maybe even DraftKings too. You can touch on that, but I think those strategies still apply here. And then I think like we're going to see Houston defense go 5% owned. And you mentioned it, the backup running back situation for Baltimore seems like another really nice one. Let me see where your boy Keaton Mitchell is. He is
Looks like he's 6K, right?
6K. Yeah, I mean those guys he won't get owned. So
Yeah.
so I think we've identified some low owned players to use here. So I think you could just eat the chalky MVPs if you want to, but certainly with the usage and the upside, Henry, Collins, Mixon, even Flowers could all get there.
I think so too. Do you think though, just based on how this pricing is much softer, that the other game, the Kansas City and Pittsburgh game, is the better showdown slate if you're a high risk player?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think just with the quarterback pricing. I mean, this one again, two quarterback optimal, and just so folks like, I will just vent for a second here. I play a lot of large field. Trying to build a unique two quarterback lineup in large field is like impossible. Like I've had lineups that have like a 2% player and leave 3K in salary, and it's still duped like 30 times because it has two quarterbacks. So yes, I agree with you. I think the first game is the one to prioritize.
All right, if we look on DraftKings, Lamar is the third most expensive player here. I don't know why, but he's only 11,000. There's two pricing quirks on this slate that I want to call out here. We have four guys 10,800 or higher. I don't think we've ever seen that either. Mixon 10.8, Lamar 11, Henry 11.2, Nico 11.4. So tough decisions are going to have to be made here. Someone's going to get squeezed from this group. And then you look, as I said in the Kansas City and Pittsburgh game, we had a bunch of overpriced guys, 6 to 8K. Here we actually have no guys except Rashad Bateman. I've never seen this either. From the backup quarterbacks at 6K all the way up to CJ Stroud at 9K, there is literally one guy that's priced. Not even like guys that are out or injured or over. No, it's literally Rashad Bateman at 7,400, Jack. So we have this situation. We have four guys 10K. We have basically no 6 or 7 or 8K players, and then we have the kickers, defenses, and values. I think it's going to just be the most stars and scrubs lineup we've ever seen. Or people are going to cheat the captains and play Andrews, Tucker, Dalton Schultz, Fairbairn, maybe Woods if people like him, likely. And that allows you to fit in one more guy. I feel like either that's optimal or the field's going to do that pretty heavily.
Are you gonna double dip right back to the well there with Mr. Likely?
Well, he's 4,400
Exactly.
now. I liked him
Ah,
when he was whatever 20 something hundred or whatever on that on Saturday. So probably not, but also still maybe because I don't know how else you're going to play this slate otherwise, just because the pricing is so hard.
do you think the same pivots apply there with Woods versus like Hutchinson, Mechie, and then the Keaton Mitchell idea?
I think you have to because Woods is 48, Mechie is 4K, Hutchinson is 3K, and maybe the cheaper guys get higher owned on Showdown because we need the salary statements more here. But DraftKings shockingly priced both of the backup running backs up for Baltimore. Ali is 2,800, Mitchell is 2,400. No free square $200 plays, so they will go super low owned. So I think I actually like that better than if they were even cheaper.
Yeah, that's like low enough that they could get there without
Right.
needing 10 touches, but it's high enough, like you said, people aren't going to do it. Okay. And do you think same deal on DraftKings? The first game is probably the better one, or you think they're both sharper just because of the pricing?
Yeah, I think they're both of equal. Actually, this one might be better on DraftKings, and the Kansas City one might be better on FanDuel. Again, if you're a high risk player and you can put the time in, we know that not everyone can put in the time on Christmas Eve and Christmas Day. So, and Jack, that's something we haven't really talked about. We talk about on the Thanksgiving slate sometimes, but if you're not gonna be around the swap or actually putting the time to make these lineups, you know, we have slates basically every day. Sit it out if you don't have the time to actually dedicate to these two games because you have to put in some brain power on short slates and especially these particular showdown slates because of the pricing.
Yep. And don't worry, there are playoff slates coming that will give you ample opportunities to practice your late swapping if you can't do it on this holiday one.
That is exactly right. All right, guys, we're going to get out of here. Enjoy. If you celebrate Christmas, Merry Christmas to you. If we don't, Merry NFL Wednesday to you, 2 game slate. So, again, the daily plug is going to be up, occupyfantasy.com later today. Not exactly sure when the model and ownership and builder will be up. We'll keep you guys posted in our Discord server, occupyfantasy.com/discord. Make sure you subscribe to the channel here on YouTube. It is free to do so. You get notified. Jack, I don't know if you knew this, but we have another short slate on Saturday. I'm not sure if you're up for that.
You know I am.
So,
I didn't know that.
yes. So, subscribe to get when the Thursday video is posted, when the Saturday video is posted, when the Sunday video is posted. Playoff slates are posted. Subscribing is the best way to get notified when we post our free content here on YouTube. And OccupyFantasy.com is where you can get that extra edge. Again, not everyone's going to pay for fantasy information, but if you're the type that needs everything you possibly can to build lineups, you want every piece of information, every edge, OccupyFantasy.com is where you can get the information and the tools to do that. Any questions, comment on the video. Can't guarantee that I'll be responding because it's Christmas Eve, but I'll do my best. So let me know. Comment. Jack, I appreciate you joining. Merry Christmas, man, and good luck tomorrow.
Merry Christmas to you and good luck as well.